Good morning, students. Today we are going to discuss about the prostate. So the prostate, it is a conical fibromusculoglandular organ. So because the gland consists of a fibrous part, the fibrous connective tissue, smooth muscle fibers are there, and also the secretory glandular portion is there. So we are calling it as fibromusculoglandular organ. It resembles a walnut shape, walnut size and shape in healthy young males. Then this prostate corresponds with the paraurethral glands of the female developmentally, and secretion of prostate forms considerable part of the semen, and the semen is slightly acidic, contains acid phosphatase, fibrinolysin, prostaglandin and large amount of zinc. So this is the location of the prostate. So the situation of the prostate, it is in the lesser pelvis. So this is the lesser pelvis. It is situated below the neck of the bladder. This is the urinary bladder here, and here this is the prostate. So it is situated below the neck of the bladder, above the urogenital diaphragm. This is the urogenital diaphragm here, right? So it is situated above the urogenital diaphragm. So what is this urogenital diaphragm and what are the spaces in this, that we will come to know in the next class of perineum. Now the location of the prostate is in between the neck of the bladder and the urogenital diaphragm, behind the lower part of the symphysis pubis. So here symphysis pubis is there here, right? Pubic bone here. So behind, so that means anteriorly you will see the symphysis pubis, and posteriorly you will see the rectal ampulla, and on each side we will see the levator ani muscle. Levator ani is not shown in here because it is a lateral boundary, and this is the sagittal section. So it's not seen. In the next image I can show you. So that is the location. So between the neck of the urinary bladder and urogenital diaphragm, above and below, and anteriorly and posteriorly you will see the symphysis pubis and the rectal ampulla, right? Then coming to the measurements, first the shape of it is in the chestnut in appearance, and transverse at the base is around 4 centimeters, vertical is 3 centimeters, and antero-posterior is 2 centimeters, and the weight is around 8 grams. And now coming to the coverings of the prostate gland, it is covered by a true capsule inner side and an outer false capsule. So here this is the true capsule here, right? And the outer, this green one, is the false capsule. So true capsule of any organ, it is the condensation of the fibrous stroma. So this is the true capsule, and this always will be on the inner side because it is the condensation of the fibrous stroma of the gland, and it closely invests, it forms a thick fascia and invests the gland, right? And intimately invests the entire prostate and formed by condensation of the fibrous stroma of the gland. Then false capsule, it is also called as the prostatic sheath, this false capsule, and it is derived from the visceral layer of the pelvic fascia. So the lesser pelvis where the prostate is situated, it is lined by the fascia, pelvic fascia. So visceral layer of the pelvic fascia is going to form the false capsule for the prostate, and at the neck of the bladder, this is the neck of the bladder, right? So at the neck of the bladder, the visceral layer of the pelvic fascia, it is attached to the pubic bone by puboprostatic ligaments, and posteriorly the capsule blends with the rectovesical fascia. So here this is the posterior surface, it blends with the rectovesical fascia of Denonvilliers, this one here, posteriorly. This is the rectum and anal canal, and this is the fat which is present between the prostate and the rectum, and then the posterior surface here blends with the, here there will be a peritoneal fold called as rectovesical fascia of Denon-Villiers. So this false capsule is going to blend with that fascia of Denon-Villiers, and the space between the true and the false capsule, you can see these are the prostatic venous plexuses which are present in between the true and the false capsule, except at the posterior surface of the gland, the venous plexuses are not quite clear. Now coming to the presenting parts of the prostate gland, it has got an apex and a base, anterior surface and posterior surface. So the anterior, the apex is directed downwards in contact with the superior fascia of the urogenital diaphragm. So here if we see, this is the urogenital diaphragm. So the superior fascia of the urogenital diaphragm, it is related to the apex. Then the base is directed upwards surrounding the neck of the bladder, and here if we see, this is the base, and this surrounds the neck of the urinary bladder. This is the urinary bladder here, right? So the neck of the urinary bladder is surrounded by the base of the prostate, and at the junction of anterior 1/3 and posterior 2/3 of the base, it is pierced by the urethra, the origin of the urethra from the bladder. So this point is between the junction of anterior 1/3 and posterior 2/3 of the base of the gland. And anterior surface, it is narrow and convex, and it is situated 2 centimeters below and behind. So this is the pubic symphysis here. So it is situated 2 centimeters below and behind the prostate anterior surface, and separated by retropubic fat. So this is the pubic bone, and behind the pubic bone, this is the retropubic fat. So anterior surface is related to pubic symphysis and retropubic fat. And also prostatic venous plexuses are present, which we have seen in the earlier slide, and deep dorsal vein of penis. So these are the relations of the anterior surface. Then the posterior surface, if we see here, it is broad and flat, and it is related to ampulla, here ampulla of the rectum, and separated by rectovesical fascia of Denon-Villiers. Yesterday, the previous slide I have shown you the fascia of Denon-Villiers. So the posterior surface is related to the rectal ampulla, separated by the fascia of Denon-Villiers, and this posterior surface is the surface which is palpable by rectal examination, about 4 centimeters above the anal opening. Now this is the anal opening here, right? So through this digital examination, when the fingers are inserted, the surface of the prostate that we feel is the posterior surface of the prostate. So that digital rectal examination I am going to discuss in detail in the later slides. And now coming to the posterior surface. The posterior surface is subdivided by transverse groove into upper small and lower large areas. So here if we see, this is the upper small area, and this is the lower large area, and this one is the transverse sulcus. And this transverse sulcus is pierced by the ejaculatory duct on each sides. And this upper area forms the median lobe, and lower area, it is broad, and this lower area is again divided by a median sulcus, which is called posterior median sulcus, into 2 lateral lobes. This is one lateral lobe, and this is another lateral lobe. Now each of these 2 inferolateral surfaces, this is called as inferolateral surface. It is related to levator ani muscle, which I have shown you in the earlier slides, levator ani muscle. And this levator ani muscle, it is named according to the organ it is related to. So here it is called as levator prostae. This part of the levator ani is called as levator prostae. and more laterally we will see the anterior recess of the ischiorectal fossa outside the levator ani. So ischiorectal fossa is also present here. That will also be discussed in the further classes. Then now coming to the lobes of the prostate gland. Anatomically we will see 3 lobes in the prostate, whereas surgically we will see 5 lobes. What are the anatomical lobes? One median lobe in the center and 2 lateral lobes. These are the anatomical lobes that we see, but surgically important lobes are 5. One median lobe, right, and then one anterior lobe. This one is the anterior lobe, and 2 lateral lobes and 1 posterior lobe. These are the 5 lobes, surgically important lobes of the prostate. So the median lobe, this is the median lobe, is wedge shaped and the apex is directed below towards the colliculus seminalis. So here if we see, this is the bulge in the urethra, which is called as colliculus seminalis. So that colliculus seminalis is related to the median lobe, and the base forms the uvula vesicae at the apex of the trigonum vesicae. So here this is the internal urethral orifice. So here it forms the uvula vesicae. Base forms the uvula vesicae. Here this widened opening is called as uvula vesicae. Then median lobe, it is bounded anteriorly by urethra, behind and on each side by ejaculatory ducts. So this is the anterior part. So anteriorly it is bounded by the urethra here. This is prostatic urethra, median lobe, and posteriorly it is related to the ejaculatory ducts here in the median plane. Another thing that we will see is the prostatic utricle, which is not seen in here. And this lobe is predominantly fibromuscular with mucus glands. In this lobe it is fibromuscular with mucus glands are seen. Then the 2 lateral lobes on either side, they are separated superficially by a postromedian sulcus. So in the earlier slide we have seen that postromedian sulcus, but deep to the sulcus and behind the urethra, both lobes are continuous here, and that continuity between the 2 lateral lobes is nothing but the posterior lobe surgically. And each lateral lobe covers sides of the urethra. So in the median plane, this one is the urethra here in the median plane, and each lateral lobe covers the sides of urethra and are connected by fibromuscular isthmus. Here fibromuscular isthmus is there, these two, and this fibromuscular isthmus is nothing but the anterior lobe in fetal life. In fetal life it contains glands, but in adult life this anterior lobe is fibromuscular. There is no glandular tissue in this, and after 6 years after birth it becomes fibromuscular. Till that age the glandular tissue may be present in the anterior lobe of the prostate. So there are altogether 5 lobes surgically: median lobe, 2 lateral lobes, 1 posterior lobe and 1 anterior lobe. And the 2 lateral lobes posteriorly are continuous through the posterior lobe, and anteriorly are continuous by an isthmus which in the fetal life has the glandular tissue, but in the adult life the glandular tissue is lost. Coming to the zonal anatomy of prostate, the glandular tissue of the prostate is subdivided into 3 distinct zones. The glandular tissue, 3 distinct zones. This area colored in yellow is called as the peripheral zone, and which has a 70% of glandular tissue of the prostate is in this peripheral zone. and central zone is there. This central zone, it will have around 25% of the glandular tissue, and another zone called as transition zone. Transition zone is this zone, which has got 5% of the glandular tissue. So this zonal anatomy is according to the percentage of the glandular tissue, the secretory tissue of the prostate. So non-glandular fibromuscular stroma fills up the space between the peripheral zone in front of the pre-prostatic urethra, right? So in between the zones, so this is the peripheral zone. Here it is all covered by the connective tissue, fibromuscular stroma. The central zone surrounds the ejaculatory ducts behind the pre-prostatic urethra and is conical in shape, and the apex is directed towards the colliculus seminalis. So this one is the central zone, right? So central zone apex is towards the colliculus seminalis. This is central zone. Then next one is the transition zone. The transition zone lies around the distal part of the pre-prostatic urethra and just proximal to the apex of central zone. So this one is the apex of the central zone. So just proximal to that we will see the transitional zone here. Here this one is the pre-prostatic sphincter and these two are the periurethral stroma, and this is the transitional zone, and this one is the central zone, and this is the peripheral zone. Okay, so the transition zone, this lies around the distal part of the pre-prostatic sphincter, or this pre-prostatic urethra here, right? It lies distal. This is the pre-prostatic urethra, and the transition zone lies little bit distal to that, and ejaculatory ducts open into the prostatic urethra between the pre-prostatic sphincter above and the ducts of peripheral zone below. So this is the peripheral zone, right? And these are the ejaculatory ducts. So in between the pre-prostatic urethra and these ducts, in between them the ejaculatory the ducts of the transition zone are going to open there. Then the peripheral zone here, this is a cup shaped and encloses the central as well as transition zones and the pre-prostatic urethra except anteriorly, and the space is filled by fibromuscular stroma, as I have told earlier. And here simple mucus secreting glands lie in this stroma above the transition zone. So simple mucus secreting glands are there above the transition zone. So this is the zonal anatomy. The point that you have to remember here is the zonal anatomy is based on the glandular tissue of the prostate. So it is divided into peripheral zone, a central zone, and a transition zone. And the percentage is 70% of glandular tissue is there in peripheral zone, 25% in the central zone, and 5% in the transitional zone. Then the structures traversing the prostatic gland, prostatic urethra. So this is the prostatic urethra. So at the base of the prostate, between the junction between the anterior 2/3 and posterior anterior 1/3 and posterior 2/3, the urethra is going to pierce the prostate. And then a pair of ejaculatory ducts here. These two are the ejaculatory ducts. So pair of ejaculatory ducts pass posterolaterally here to the median lobe, opens at the colliculus. This is the colliculus seminalis. This bulge is the colliculus seminalis. So and here we are seeing the ejaculatory ducts. And then prostatic utricle, it is a mucus cul-de-sac about 6 millimeters long, extends upwards and backwards behind the colliculus seminalis, and in the median lobe it is seen, the prostatic utricle. So the structures traversing are prostatic urethra. You can see the openings of the prostatic ducts into the prostatic sinus, this one here, and a pair of ejaculatory ducts are seen, openings of ejaculatory ducts, and above and behind we will see the prostatic utricle. So these are the openings in the or the structures passing through the prostate gland. Then now coming to the structure of the prostate gland or the microscopic structure. So 1/4 of the fibrous tissue, 1/4 of the muscular tissue, and 2/4 of the glandular tissue. So if we divide the substance of the prostate gland into 4 parts, 2 parts are by the glandular tissue. So all these area what you are seeing, this is all the glandular tissue, and then this one here is the fibromuscular stroma. So 1/4 of the collagen fibers we will see, and 1/4 of the smooth muscle fibers we are going to see here. And fibrous tissue forms the true capsule at periphery. That is nothing but the true capsule is condensation of the fibromuscular stroma, right? So the true capsule is formed by this fibrous tissue, and muscular tissue is smooth muscle continuous with the detrusor muscle, arranged in outer and inner sheets connected by radiating fibers, and the spaces between these fibers are occupied by follicles of the gland. These are the follicles of the gland, and this one is the fibromuscular fibromuscular tissue here, and this one is the glandular tissue, the follicles of the prostate. And there are transversely oriented arched striated muscle fibers within the prostate anterior to the urethra, blending with fibrous capsule posterolaterally, right? And this one is called as the corpora amylaceae, and these condensed bodies, the secretions are condensed and left off in the follicles. The corpora amylaceae are seen more in the old age. So that is the structure of the prostate. Then the glandular tissue in the prostate, it is arranged in 3 layers. So inner, this one is prostatic urethra. So surrounding that, here we will see the inner mucus glands here. These villi kind of thing what you are seeing are the inner mucus glands. Then intermediate we will see the submucous glands, and main glands are present in the outer side. So that is the peripheral zone. 70% of the glands are seen in the peripheral zone, and there is a central zone, and there is a transition zone here, right? Then coming to the arterial supply of the prostate, inferior vesical artery, this one is the inferior vesical artery, and then middle rectal artery and internal pudendal arteries. So these are going to supply the prostate above and below. Inferior vesicle supplies the upper part, and then middle rectal and internal pudendal artery supply the lower part. The venous drainage, veins from the prostatic plexus in between true and false capsule we have seen. So they receive the deep dorsal vein of penis anteriorly and communicates above with the vesical venous plexus. The prostatic venous plexus will communicate with the vesical venous plexus, and finally draining into internal iliac vein. So the venous drainage of the prostate is into the internal iliac vein, and few veins from the prostate pass backwards through the anterior sacral foramina and draining into the internal vertebral venous plexuses known as paravertebral veins of Batson. So from the prostate, few of the veins will drain into the internal vertebral venous plexus, and they are called as the paravertebral veins of Batson. Then the lymphatic drainage, the internal iliac group of lymph nodes. Here if we see, these are the internal iliac group of lymph nodes, and these are external iliac group and sacral group of lymph nodes. So all the lymphatics from the prostate, they are drained into these three nodes: internal iliac, external iliac and sacral nodes. And the nerve supply, the superior hypogastric plexus convey the sympathetic nerves L1 and L2. This is the hypogastric nerve, right? And then the parasympathetic fibers are derived from the pelvic splanchnic nerves. And conveying preganglionic fibers from S2, S3 and S4, which are the parasympathetic are secretomotor to the gland. That means the glandular secretions are formed upon the stimulation from the parasympathetic fibers. And superior hypogastric plexus will form the sympathetic nerves from L1 and L2, preganglionic fibers from L1 and L2. Then age changes in the prostate. So by the age of 20, the average male has a prostate of the size of a walnut, this one. And very few prostate related health concern occur at this stage. That means mostly there won't be any prostate related health concerns at this age. And by the age of 40, many men start to experience some prostate enlargement. And by the age of 50, it is thought that nearly 50% of the men start to experience some level of prostate concerns because there is slight enlargement, right? And by the age of 60, a man's prostate can continue to grow, possibly results in urinary issues, because the base of the prostate is related to the neck of the urinary bladder and the urethra passes through the prostate. So obviously enlargement of the urethra will cause urinary issues such as frequent or difficult urination, because the inflamed prostate putting increased pressure on the urethra and the bladder. And at this point, these prostate concern may range from being a mild inconvenience to causing more serious lifestyle disruptions. That is, because of difficult micturition and frequent micturition, there can be lack of sleep, and nighttime urination also a reason for lack of sleep. So this is by the age of 60. And by the age of 80, roughly 80% of all men experience prostate concerns by the age of 80. And in fact, these concerns are so common at this age that it has been said that practically all men will have enlarged prostate if they live long enough. So that means by age of 80, the size of the prostate will be this much. So these are the age related changes. So in newborn, the prostate consists basically of duct system in fibromuscular stroma before puberty, and grows slowly, and rudimentary follicles bud outside the sides of ducts. And at puberty shows sudden growth, doubles in size, follicles shows enfoldings, and above 45 years of age, mucosal folds disappear and follicles contain corpora amylacea above 45. Right? And in old age it may atrophy or show hypertrophy, but mostly in old age we will see hypertrophy of the prostate. Then coming to the clinical considerations, one is prostatitis. Prostatitis is swelling and inflammation of the prostate gland. Okay, here this is the prostate. So this is the normal prostate. And if there is any swelling and inflammation, the swelling is towards the internal side, that is towards the urethra. So that's why it causes difficulty in micturition. Enlarged prostate will compress the prostatic urethra. So difficulty in urinating, pain in the groin region because of the inflammation, and pain can be in the pelvic area or genitals, and sometimes flu-like symptoms are seen because of this inflammation. Prostatitis may get better on its own, or if it is infected with bacteria, then antibiotics may help to relieve the prostatitis. Then one more condition is benign hypertrophy of the prostate. So this one is the normal prostate here, and this is the prostatic urethra. Okay. In hypertrophy, here we can see the gland is enlarged. We call it benign because it is not cancerous, it is not malignant. So enlargement is there and difficulty is there, but it is non-cancerous. So it is called prostatic enlargement, benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH, also called as prostate enlargement. It is non-cancerous, increase in size of the prostate gland. Symptoms again, because it is compressing on the urethra, so frequent urination, there is a trouble starting to urinate, and weak stream, inability to urinate or loss of bladder control can occur in benign prostatic hypertrophy. So for BPH and other prostate concerned clinical conditions, prostatectomy is done. So one is suprapubic approach, wherein the incision is given above the pubis, and then the part of the gland or the entire gland is removed. Another procedure is TURP, transurethral resection of the prostate. So in this, through the urethral opening, the resectoscope, this instrument is called as resectoscope. It is inserted through the urethra, and once we reach the prostatic urethra, then the part of the urethra is removed. So that is transurethral resection of the prostate. Then another thing is carcinoma of the prostate, and also other conditions wherein there is enlargement of the prostate. We do the digital rectal examination, DRE. So here through the anal opening, the finger is inserted, and here what surface is palpated? The posterior surface of the prostate is palpated. So abnormal findings can be nodules, can be asymmetry, or can be induration. So DRE can detect findings in the posterior and lateral aspects of the gland, right? So posterior and lateral surfaces also can be felt through the distal rectal examination. 85% of the cancers arise peripherally, where they can be detected, right? So through this DRE, you can see the change in the like nodular pattern or asymmetry will be there when you feel the prostate through the rectum, and the majority of the cancers are detected by DRE alone. And clinically and pathologically advanced one, the tissue is taken and then sent for examination, then the diagnosis is confirmed, right? So this is the digital rectal examination. So these are the clinical points related to the prostate. Thank you.